Good morning. I
Good
think
morning.
I see the recording. So are we live? Um,
Um,
yes.
it is setting up for YouTube, is what it says on mine. Done redirecting, and we are live.
All
Okay.
right, perfect. Well, we will go ahead and get started. This is our second meeting for strategic planning work group, and we will go ahead and call to order if we could go ahead and do roll call.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Miss Richards,
Here.
Chair Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Superintendent Hannah,
Here.
Commissioner Cummings,
Here.
and Vice Chair Watts, who is chair of this group.
Here. Thank you very much, Trinity. And so we will dive right into our next agenda item, which is approval of our agenda. I think everyone should have received the agenda. So all in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Aye.
All right. And we will move into our next step. So we had a great, I feel like a great discussion and outcome from our last meeting, which was around kindergarten readiness. And we landed on a proposed SMART goal, one goal for kindergarten readiness. And we had asked that if we could have just the team bring that back to us with a final proposed action or goal, should I say? And we would just discuss it just one last time before we dive into the youth development. So Sika, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Committee Chair. So Trinity, if you'll share the screen. Okay, awesome. So everyone can see this, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so we are on, of course, our second meeting. Next slide. Theory of change informs everything we do. Next slide. This is our investment overview, and it shows where we have been from 21 to 24, kindergarten readiness, youth success, which we also are calling youth development, family well-being, and capacity building. Next slide. This shows the community impact for a few of the indicators in our priority areas. So success in school and life, we just pulled out kindergarten readiness, third grade reading, eighth grade math, and juvenile crime. This is the community-wide indicator. And so it's not just any programs that we funded, but also all of the programming, funding, state, federal, all of it that goes into our community. So we'll see that kindergarten readiness went down just a tad, third grade reading, eighth grade, and juvenile crime. Next slide. This is some of our indicators for healthy children and youth. So we're looking at low birth weight, self-harm, teen suicide, DV incidents. We'll see that all of those have gone down from our benchmark year. And next slide. Stable and nurturing families and communities. We'll see the categories there, and we'll see that food insecurity went up just a tad in 2023. These are the last available years for which we had data. Next slide. So just to remind you of our needs assessment, the darker the color, the more the negative impact. So when we look at childhood poverty, right in the zip codes where we've targeted, next slide. Food insecurity, again, I call it the U of Leon County, right where we are targeting our funding. Next slide. Low birth weight, same thing, intensity of the color, the higher the number. Next slide. And then gun deaths, same thing. Next slide. So we'd like to think of this, and this is more for our
Do we
committee
have
member.
these slides?
Yes, you may have these. Absolutely. At Trinity, let's send the deck out after the meeting. So what we want to conceptualize is conception to career. We want to look at prenatal, and those are some of the indicators. early childhood indicators, preschool indicators, early elementary indicators. Next slide. Elementary, I'm going to go through these because this is going to impact what we're discussing today. So elementary, some of those indicators: absenteeism, access to after school, child abuse and neglect numbers, families in poverty, juvenile justice, and then some spaces for some other indicators that we can add. Middle school, we want to look at 8th grade math, school absenteeism, harm among youth, neighborhood safety, juvenile justice, spaces for additional. And then high school, we want to look at graduation rates, FAFSA completion rates, absenteeism, teen birth rate, industry certifications, the other ones there, and then our space for other indicators. And then as we get into young adult, because as we know, our age group is conception all the way to age, I say 23 and 364 days, 24. So repeat teen birth rate, labor force participation and median wages, young adult poverty rate, young adult suicide, and then the ability to add some more indicators there. Next slide. So last time we talked about kindergarten readiness and we came to a draft goal that will be presented to the full council. Next slide. And as the work group chair said, staff went back and refined it a bit and then added some possible draft strategies, which we do not need to approve. Those strategies can change and pivot as we get to the approval of the draft goal, but we settled on increase kindergarten readiness rates in select Title I elementary schools by at least 5 percentage points by 2030 compared to the 2024 baseline as measured by the state-administered FAST STAR assessment. So I'm going to go back to what Superintendent Hannah was saying, and one of the reasons why Mrs. Bruner is on today. If we need to change what our measurement tool is, we can do that. And that's the beauty of it, is that it's dynamic, because we want to make sure that we are measuring in accordance with what makes sense and gives us the indicators. So I'm going to stop right there. Let's take just a few minutes, Mr. Hannah and Ms. Bruner. And then I also want to allow Superintendent Jones to jump in as our school board member. So Mr. Hannah.
All right, thank you, Sika. So after having a chance to talk to our folks about kindergarten readiness and how it's measured, I wanted Brooke to come on to present maybe another proposal to the group as far as what we use as our metric in this SMART goal. We need to set ourselves up for success. We don't want to set a SMART goal that's not attainable. And I just want to make sure at the end of the day, whatever that metric is, whatever that measure is, or whatever we're looking at, is done in a way that's that captures the best that our students have to offer. So Brooke, if you would, you want to jump in and talk about kindergarten readiness rates and how they're assessed when they first come to us?
Sure. Thank you for allowing me to join this morning. Trinity or Sika, is it okay if I have just a small slide deck just to provide some visuals to go along with my words? Because sometimes words are boring.
Sure. Trinity can do, you know what I'm trying to say.
Share screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So I just wanted to share a couple of points regarding kindergarten readiness and just perhaps another data point to consider when creating your goals. And obviously, this is based on, really what is the story that you're trying to tell. So just quickly, so for both VPK and the beginning of kindergarten, sometimes the beginning of first grade, FAST is utilizing this STAR early literacy assessment, which is different than the STAR literacy assessment, okay? Early literacy versus STAR literacy. And the difference there in when a child engages in STAR literacy is dependent on the STAR early literacy unified scaled score. So I'll dive into that a little bit deeper in a moment. But this particular FAST assessment, either one, is measured by a star assessment 3 times per year, starting in VPK. And it measures foundational reading skills as well as early numeracy skills. And so those would be things like math vocabulary, one-to-one correspondence, understanding the foundational concepts of early numeracy. So limitations of kindergarten readiness could include the following. So it's really important for us to take into consideration that kindergarten readiness occurs the first 30 days of school. That could be week 1, or that could be week 4. And so I want you to think about what kindergarten might look like in week 1 for a child that has never attended school before in their entire life. Maybe they have not engaged in a computer that has a mouse, because the way that we administer the FAFSA assessment is through a computer-based module. So the students have to be able to manipulate the mouse and select their answers. This occurs in either a whole group setting, it could occur in a small group setting. So the testing environment varies from site to site, classroom to classroom. In addition, it blends the pre-K impact with some at-home factors, right? What does that at-home literacy look like for that child? And then there's a really, really strong influence that impacts those kindergarten readiness rates in the first 30 days, and that's summer slide. So even our students that may have attended VPK or some type of structured early learning, many of them will experience that summer slide. Not to mention that they're in an unfamiliar environment that's different than their early learning space. We can't get a gauge on what their attendance looked like or what their mobility looked like. And then in addition to that, the kindergarten readiness score, which is also PM1, can understate the actual gains that occurred in an early learning environment. And I'll illustrate that further in a future slide.
Brooke, can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
Is it your intention at the end of this that you're going to propose then I can just save my questions if you're okay.
Yeah, so actually on this slide, let's talk up for a second about why PM3 in kindergarten might be a better measure of early learning outcomes. So when we look at PM3 at the end of kindergarten,
can you explain PM1, PM2, PM3 so they understand exactly what PM3 is and when it's measured?
Sure, absolutely. So PM1 stands for Progress Monitoring Window 1. So whether it's in VPK or in kindergarten, that's occurring the first 30 days of that program year. And then PM2 occurs mid-year, right? So we're taking that same assessment. We administered the first 30 days, then we will administer it mid-year. And we're tracking the student's progress. And then at the end of the school year, the last 30 days, we will administer that same assessment a third time to track those student gains. So in theory, it could be the same assessment if the child is still in STAR early literacy. Once they reach a unified scaled score of 852, then the student is moved to STAR literacy assessment, okay? Because they're indicating that they are ready for a harder assessment. So it could change in kindergarten, so please be aware of that. So going back to, and I can pause there. Are there any questions with PM1, 2, or 3? Okay.
So if I may, Brooke, yeah, so I don't have any questions with that. I do want to make sure that we stay on time. And so I am going to propose as you finish this up, that maybe for the SMART goal, council members, we take the measurement, we take the tool out. Because when we're talking about the SMART goal, we don't have to say in the goal what the tool is. We're just looking at the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time certain, not necessarily the goal, and not necessarily the assessment. And we can put the assessment of what we use in the actual strategies. So I just wanted to say that now, so you could be thinking about that as Brooke finishes up.
All right, so PM3 is a reflection of an entire kindergarten year, on top of potentially any type of early learning and instruction that has occurred. It's an end of the year score, so it's a little bit more stable than those first 30 days of kindergarten. And then finally, it reduces the summer and adjustment noise and better captures that cumulative impact of early learning investments. All right, so I do want to draw your attention to really two things. In 2022, our assessment for kindergarten readiness changed, right? So we moved to using FAST in 2022. And then in addition, last school year, we moved from a cut score of 690, unified scaled score of 690 to determine kindergarten readiness, to a unified scaled score of 707 to determine kindergarten readiness. So you will see a significant change in our data over the last 2 years, mainly due to a pretty significant change in the unified scaled score. Mr. Superintendent Hannah, did you want to say something? Okay, all right. All right, so this is really important to consider when you're looking or choosing the metric that is going to best measure your outcome data. So remember that I said that a ready kindergartner is one who scores a 707 on that unified scaled score. So many of you are probably familiar with levels, as if you think back to like our FCAT scores and newly our FAST scores, you're used to level 1, my child scored a level 3, my child scored a level 5. So when you look at that in terms of this kindergarten scale score, a 707 falls in the well below average range, but that's what we're calling kindergarten ready. So that would fall in a level 1 when we talk about levels, and it falls below, right, far below what is considered level 1. If you look at level 3, 4, and 5, which is what we want to target by the end of kindergarten, then you're looking at a unified scaled score somewhere between 788 and 870 or above. So this is just our Leon County Schools data. This is what I have access to, but I really wanted to use this graphic to point out to you this blue bar indicates the students that were in our VPK programs in Leon County Schools in 2020, at the end of 2025. This red bar indicates those that scored a 707 in kindergarten of 2025. Okay, so here they ended with us in VPK and they scored a 707 or better. We were nearly at 80%. And then they went the entire summer without instruction and they came to us in kindergarten. And in the first 30 days, we only had about 55% scoring at 707 or better. So I just use this to illustrate to you the impact of the summer slide, even when children have gone to a quality early learning program. So this really repeats what I said earlier and just reiterates that. And I know that you guys are short on time, so I'm going to move forward. But the other piece that I want to point out is that we find in our district that our PM3 scores in kindergarten are more closely aligned with our third grade reading scores, which indicate that that PM3 for kindergarten is a better indicator for later success. Where we're seeing quite a bit of difference, up to 15 to 20 percentage points when we look at kindergarten readiness versus our third grade reading scores. Typically, what we would expect to see is that kindergarten data be a indicator for how students will score moving forward. Now, our job and our goal is to close any gaps that may exist, but we're seeing a much more closely aligned score when we look at kindergarten PM3 versus our third grade reading scores. All right, so just some considerations for the council is to look at adopting the kindergarten PM3. And you're looking at a score performance at 788 or better, because that's what would indicate a level 3 or better. And then using the actual kindergarten readiness score, PM1, as contextual information for our students. And then also, and I know Sika, your team does an amazing job of really clearly annotating their data when there has been change to the assessment or the cut score. So I would just really encourage you to continue to do that so that there's a really clear understanding of what created some of those dips in the data. So my contact information is included. If you need me to share the slide deck, I'm happy to do that so that you can review it at a later time with your team. And other than that, I'll hand it over to Superintendent Hannah.
So, Brooke, thank you for doing that. And yes, if you would send that slide deck to Trinity and to Sika, and they can push it out. The other thing that Brooke didn't mention are teachers' assessment, professional development goals. So their professional development goals are based on the learning gains of their students. So if the first 30 days, if all of their kids are knocking it out of the park, when they go to reassess them at the end of the year, they won't show as much gain. So I'm not saying our teachers are not implementing this initial assessment with fidelity, but I think they don't want their kids making an A+ on the first test because there's no room for a gain at the end of the year, which is another consideration. I think as far as a metric, the ending assessment of kindergarten would serve us better than the initial assessment in kindergarten. The problem with that is, though, however, all of the state data is measured around kindergarten readiness and what is the district's kindergarten readiness scores, and that's derived from that PM1 data. So I think there are two options. We can move to adopt the end of year assessment in kindergarten as our number. And Brooke, do you have any idea about what our PM3 kindergarten number was last year? Is 3 and above or no?
I do not off the top of my head, but when I send the slide deck, I will also send that number so that Trinity and Sika can share it out with the council.
All right. So teachers are given a number, like in the PM1, if only 20% of their kids are scoring level 3 or better, and then at PM3, 60% of their kids are showing level 3 or better. And in PM1, what it's measuring actually is what a kid should know at the end of kindergarten, not what they should know at the beginning of the year. So I think PM3 would be a better measure, but the problem is all the information that's pushed out there is about kindergarten readiness scores in Leon County or Gaston County or Duval County or whatever, and that is based on PM1. So the options are: 1, we adopt PM3 as our local measure, or 2, I have a come to Jesus meeting with my kindergarten teachers and my principals about how they are implementing PM1 to ensure that our kids are performing at their very highest level right when they come to us. So we have good information to base that number on. So I think those are the two options. Either we adopt PM3, or I need to have a conversation with our principals and our kindergarten teachers about what exactly that assessment looks like in that first 30 days of school for those kindergarten kids.
Well, Superintendent Hannah, I really appreciate you having Brooke come out, because I definitely learned some information this morning that may have changed my perspective as well. I wonder, Trinity, are you able to bring up the slide with the actual SMART goal drafted and the action items? So, Sika, a question for you, maybe for Brooke. So, wait a minute. Increase readiness, school by at least.
Yeah, I went in and did some
You took it
changes.
out. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So you took out the fast. So these draft strategies and objectives, did you just add that PM3 statement to
I
over there?
did. So
Okay.
Vice Chair, if you will allow, what I'm suggesting is that we, for the goal, don't put the measure in there. It's not about the measurement tool doesn't need to be in the goal, but the goal talks about increasing the readiness in select Title I schools by at least 5 percentage points. And we may even want to look at what that is by 2030 compared to the 2024 baseline. So it tells us where we're starting, where we want to go, the time we want to use it, and where we want to implement it. And so what I'm suggesting is for each of our goals, we put our measurement indicator. And so the suggestion from the school district is that we use the PM3 Unified Scale Score performance of 388 or better. And what I'm also suggesting is that so that we have a measurement with the state, we can have that data available. Um, my con I don't know if it's a concern, but it may be something you want to discuss for just a minute or two. Do we want to be in the business of trying to tell a teacher what they need to be doing? Like, I heard what you said, Superintendent, but my mother is a retired educator. And so I don't feel comfortable having now we're trying to do this. So they have to meet yet another measure where we have a measure that we can use. So that's.
I was just right. I was just offering that, Sika, because everything that's going to be published is going to be around kindergarten readiness, and Leon County is going to continue to show low kindergarten readiness numbers if that initial assessment during the first 30 days of kindergarten is not done with fidelity. So I think there needs to be a conversation about how we are administering that test, what that looks like. Like, a lot of these kids, some of them never even use a computer, much less a mouse, and so it's really awkward for them, where intellectually they may know a lot, but they aren't used to the technology, and they aren't used to school. A lot of these kids are trying to figure out how to open a juice box or tie their shoes or whatever. So whatever we're doing, I just want to make sure we're doing it in a manner that truly reflects the work we have done before kids get to us in kindergarten, and by the end of kindergarten, before their next assessment in third grade.
Go ahead, Council Member Richards, and then I'll go to Council Member Jones.
Mr. Superintendent Hannah took the words right out of my mouth. You got, 5-year-olds that have taken a nap up until their first day of school, and you're asking them to complete a progress monitoring on the third week of school, possibly. And it just is not, there's so many factors that play into that first progress monitoring window that, I'm more comfortable with going with the PM3 window, if that's what the suggestion here is. Also, Ms. Berner is the expert in this field, and so I feel comfortable with her suggestion here and taking that and pivoting. I appreciate you coming, Brooke.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones.
What I think is critically important is the responsibility board of the superintendent, particularly in conversation with the Children's Services Council as its member. This conversation lends itself rightfully to assignments born of his responsibility as superintendent. So here now, the stewardship of any investments that we make, particularly for the our shared target population, are now then manifest through his direction and supervision. I think it's also critically important that, and I got to give the superintendent and Brooke credit for this, they realized that it was important for them to influence all of the pathways by which children came to our district. That's why they went to private providers, providing guidelines and instruction on what we knew were just base skills that children needed to have if they're coming from a credible early learning program. And having weighed in like that, taking into consideration what they would be tested on, what the expectations would be, I would like to think will continue to move the needle when they talk to those private providers. And then when the superintendent and the school district were intentional about bringing early learning programs to our elementary schools, making certain that we had a full day's learning beyond just the hours that were paid for by the Early Learning Coalition, making that intentional investment, and then taking it a step further than by then having those early learning programs then on our sites. There's another part of this that has to be a part of this conversation, and that is one of the principal providers of instruction is Head Start, also before they come to us. Now, because I'm reckless, there's an issue with Head Start and the quality and our Head Start, our local Head Start is one of the lowest ranked in the state of Florida. That intentionality through our collaboration with them to include our investment in Head Start has to come with expectations of greater deliverables or more impactful delivery of services, such that that too can move the needle in progress for our kids, because they're one of the principal providers as described in what we describe here in terms of what are those impacts before they get to us, the quality of instruction that is being provided by those sites as well, because a great number of our children are coming to our district from those sites. So we also need, a part of that conversation also includes the Head Start program that is administered by the Capital Area Community Action Agency, right? So there too are a principal part in this conversation too, and should also be included. And like we are through this conversation, there's accountability and assignments that the superintendent bears as one of our critical partners. Head Start also needs to be a part of this conversation, as well as the Early Learning Coalition. But I think this is a great start, and the numbers that you've shown are eye-opening, informative, and certainly it tells us where we need to go. I saw when you were flashing through the slides right quick, that red arrow down, I did not miss it. All right. So it's great that we're having this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. And it is, let me see, 9:45, and I'm going to move over to Councilmember Cummings, and then we'll dive into the youth next topic.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you guys, and I want to thank Ms. Brunner and our executive director and Superintendent Hannah for the overview. I apologize for having missed the first meeting, but apparently you guys have done a lot. I did a lot in that first meeting. A couple of my questions were, I guess, basically addressed and answered by Chair Jones, but my question was what do we do as a council as far as our funding? How would we impact the positive outcome of our children if we utilize that PM1 level? And after hearing Superintendent Hannah, I don't think we have a choice. We certainly want to be in the mix as far as the state level indicators, the analysis. And I think that probably the recommendation by our executive director with utilizing PM PM1 as well as PM3, because I think we have to be in the mix as far as the initial measurement. But my question is, for the kindergartners coming in, how can we impact their readiness coming in after having many of them not being exposed to that type setting? So if it's through our funding with the Early Learning Coalition or the Head Start or some other groups that perhaps we fund, I think we clearly have to send a message, or maybe look at some measurables so that those numbers will be, impacted. We're talking about the first 30 days of school. I mean, that's a short period of time. I don't know if we have any alternative, Mr. Superintendent, but I appreciate those that are involved in the school system giving us some information and some direction, so that we as the council, or we as the Children's Services Council, can assist in a positive impact for our children, just entering school. So thank
Commissioner
you.
Cummings. Oh yeah, Commissioner Cummings, I appreciate that. I'm going to take a chance at responding to that, and then also maybe just addressing really quickly Councilmember Jones' statements around Head Start. I think they all tie in together. Short version, what we talked about at the last meeting, we had several good comments around the groups out there that are already quote unquote providing, if you will, services, kindergarten readiness services. I'm using that as a broad terminology. So we had given the team guidance that as it pertains to any funding that we decide to explore, that there would be research around the different programs out there that are currently doing the work around kindergarten readiness. How do we obtain their data and their goals, how they're doing X, Y, and Z, which would then inform the council and the team of what they send to us as proposals of how we help, if you will, move the needle in kindergarten readiness. So that's like the short version. But Sika, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. So, Whitney, Lord have mercy. Trinity, if you'll share the screen one more time. I think the draft strategies that we have that go with the goal help to address that. So it's never about just hitting them when they get to kindergarten, it's hitting them before. So we would be looking at not only that prenatal and pre-K service continuum, so we'd be looking at that. We'd be looking at strengthening the prenatal and early childhood health supports. And then the very last one, improving the access to stable, high quality childcare for Alice families. So we're taking into consideration what happens before they even get to kindergarten. So to the superintendent's point, if we can hit them early, then when they get to kindergarten, we would see hopefully a higher performance at PM1, understanding that that is where the state is kind of scoring. But then we can still have our goal of looking at PM3. And so it may seem like it's dual messaging, but it's really not. It's kind of a goal within a goal, if that makes sense.
It does.
Well, it does. To me, it does and it doesn't. I mean, because the community is going to be looking for something that's very measurable, that's very objectionable. I mean, it's you can see right in front of you. And when we say in bold, bigger font, and increase kindergarten readiness scores and select Title I schools by at least 5 points or more, that signals to me that I got to get to my kindergarten teachers and talk about how we are implementing and administering PM1. And that was the dilemma, right? Because PM1 is the data that goes out to everybody, kindergarten readiness. And what we were saying is really at the end of kindergarten is when we feel like we would have a better understanding of where kids are intellectually and how they are set up before they get to that next goal at the end of third grade, 3 years later. But I think by listening to the group, and I'm probably in agreement that we do keep that PM3 as a measure to increase from the beginning of kindergarten to the end. But I need to make sure that we're having conversations with our principals as a district to what that first assessment looks like with our kindergarten kids, whether they need to do it in small group or individuals, instead of just telling 18 kids, okay, open up your computers and start your test. That we need to figure out how we are administering that assessment, because we can't fail on this. I mean, by 2030, we better have increased kindergarten readiness PM1 scores by 5% or more. The community's going to be screaming, right?
But but what I see in this is, through this collaboration and being armed with the data, we know what success looks like, and we know, and through the analysis of these metrics, I would assume, Mr. Superintendent, as the chief teacher of the district, then armed with this information, this will then inform lesson plans, curriculum development, the integration of staffing plans. All of that would then be informed by this information on the front end, and then subsequently we'll be able to see the return on the investment of resources, teachers, additional supports in those classrooms, to then see what works and what doesn't work over the course of these next 6 years.
Councilmember Cummings, I see your hand raised.
Yes, yeah, Mr. Chair, no, I was just thinking as well, based on the information that we know about our children and their learning capacity at an early age, even from 1 year old up until perhaps, and I think we're doing that, we can put more emphasis on those entities that provide pre-kindergarten services. We've talked about perhaps when they're taking their test in the first 30 days, many of them might not have ever seen a computer or a mouse, or don't have that exposure. But I think if we, as a council, can look at those groups and use what energy and resources we have to equip our children before they get to kindergarten. Make sure we're dealing with entities that we support financially, entities that can provide some level of exposure to the children before they get in pre-kindergarten. I mean, we know our children come here now pressing buttons on our cell phones. They know how to navigate the cell phones and go to at 2 and 3 years old, they know how to go to the various games on the cell phones and what have you. So they come here with a lot of exposure, and I think it's part of our planning, if we can just look at that and look at exposure to them before they get to kindergarten. And perhaps Superintendent Hannah, I know he's concerned, about directing teachers specifically in the kindergarten area about how to specifically deal with the children so that their scores would be elevated at the PM1 level. But I think prior to them getting to school, if we can just emphasize that, and I think our executive director that's basically what she indicated, as far as before the children get to kindergarten, if we can do something, or if we can, I guess, emphasize some positive exposure at the early learning level, or at the Head Start level, or some other entity that provides pre-kindergarten services for our children. Just let them have that type of exposure, so that when they get to kindergarten, it's not foreign to them. It's familiarity with our children, and I think that in itself would lend to higher scores during that first 30 days that they start school.
Thank you, Councilmember Cummings. And I know we're pressed for time, but I mean, it is a good discussion. We want to make sure that we get it right. So there's a lot of good perspective being shared here. And before I go to Councilmember Jones, Sika, I did want to ask you, because I know that we have in here select Title I elementary schools. So it's not that we would be in all of them. It's that we had decided on perhaps choosing, right? So that would give us some flexibility of how we emphasize or support if we only chose two schools, right? Like we'd have more emphasis to maybe help move me, but I also want to just ask the 2030, I can't remember that. Who came up with that as a
We
framework?
went to 2030 because I'm sure I have it in my notes somewhere, but we took it one more year because we were going to start in we were starting in this year. So we were taking a year off. We were starting our baseline at a
Okay.
point where we needed to extend out one more year because originally our strategic planning was back from 2022.
Superintendent, let me one question, then I'll move on to the other ones. So let's say that we actually only chose two schools, two Title I schools to focus on as a part of our SMART goal here. Do you think that would be feasible? And then we'll be able to actually will we be able to actually likely accomplish or move the needle if we chose two schools and didn't go to 2030, but went to a shorter time frame? Did that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. So first I have a question about the 2024. Should that be 2025, like what we just did what the kids did this past August or last
So,
August?
so last meeting, I thought we decided on the 2024 academic year, but if we've got 2025 academic year information, then that would make sense to go to 2030. So we
And so
have,
I think what Chair Watts is saying is, do you want to speed that up? Do you want to say instead of waiting 5 years from now, do we want to show it in the next like 3 years by 2028? From 2025 to 2028, we'll increase by 5 points, right? I think that's a conversation you can have. I'm not sure why you have select Title I elementary schools instead of just.
I'll tell you why. Because when we look at, let's just take, for example, Chair Jones's district, his entire district is Title I. Our resources are, as you say all the time, they're not infinite. And so in my perspective, we would look at the lowest performing schools and we would target those schools. So if we're targeting the lowest performing schools and we're targeting those schools, looking at other resources or going into those schools, how do we layer, braid, and blend? And if those school rates are going up, then I was an English major, but if those rates are going up, then the total rates should be going up. So we're trying to be strategically focused about where the resources go. So for example, this is just an example, if we know that, I'm just using Pineview because that's the one that came to mind, that a lot of those kids are coming to school with no computer skills, right? So they haven't been, so what do we do to get them exposed to the computers beforehand so that when they're getting in there to take that PM1 assessment, that's not the first time they're seeing a computer. That's very broad, but very simplistic. So I guess it allows us to really target where the resources go, understanding that if we can raise the kindergarten readiness rates in select schools, and if we're able to do it in one school, then we can expand as we go. So it's not necessarily only, but we have to start somewhere. And I just want us to be careful about creating something that's so broad that we're not going to be able to achieve it.
Well, I don't.
So that's how we came up with that.
Right. And I respect your point. And if that's the direction this group wants to go, fine. I disagree with it. I think it should be in all Title I elementary schools. Otherwise, then are you focusing on just early learning programs that are around Pineview Elementary as opposed to around Sealy Elementary or Oak Ridge Elementary School? I mean, I just think Title I elementary schools in general makes to me more sense. And let's also be clear, these aren't resources that are going to the school at all. These are resources that are going to support programs before kids come to Leon County schools, starting with Healthy Start and the $4 million investment we've made with Healthy Start in their prenatal programs and going to OBGYN offices. And all of those things play into a part of being ready for your K-12 experience by the time you reach 5 years of age or and come to us. I know Mr. Johnson has had his hand up for seems like an hour now.
Councilmember Jones, then Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, because I was wondering how we would identify the schools when the resources are not being given to the schools directly. So that's why I would think that it would be a broad brush unless we're just only making measurements of particular schools. And then I don't know, the resources are being provided to providers who will be serving all schools. Unless, of course, we're requiring that the providers who, when they make applications for our funds, include the schools that we would identify particularly. And that may be a challenge for some of our providers in terms of providing resources, I would think. But again, you make a great point. Although I am the school board member whose entire district is made up of Title I schools, again, Title I schools and Title I children exist in all 5 districts. Well, actually, 4 districts.
Whatever it is the will of the council. So we will implement whatever you all decide
I
regarding.
think taking measurements of all of the progress from all of our schools would be more demonstrative because we're assessed for all schools, not just any select schools, in terms of our Title I kindergarten readiness.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Johnson, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I did. Just real quickly. Certainly, it's not my wheelhouse about which metric is used about how we measure kindergarten readiness. But what I do want to speak to is how do we know or validate that the 3 bulleted draft strategies or objectives are the absolute vital levers that we need to measure community investment in to make sure that we can achieve that goal of kindergarten readiness, whether it's PM1 or PM3. So when you start going down below that to say, well, our strategies and objectives are bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3, are there experts out there that can validate to the council that these are the 3 critical areas, whether it's 3 or 4 or whatever, that you need to understand how investments are being made in the community and whether we can either add to or provide critical targeted investments in these 3 areas. And these are the 3 levers so that when we get to whatever kindergarten readiness measure is, we have the highest probability of achieving the goal.
So if I can, Mr. Vice Chair, we had, and I don't know if you remember last time, we pulled up these 5 pillars that national research says that if you affect these 5 pillars, you should see an increase in your kindergarten readiness, in the readiness for school. Holly is out of the country, and I refused to make her get on this while she was out of the country. And I don't have it right at my fingertips. But those 5 pillars dictate that if you look in those areas, you should see an elevation. These are 3 of those pillars that we had some strategies that we put there. This does not have to be the be all end all, but we wanted to give an idea of what we would impact or where we would look to focus to try to achieve the goal. So that is from where these come.
Okay.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yep, and so I appreciate that, Sika. I just want to make sure that, as Superintendent Hannah has mentioned, to set ourselves up for success, we've got to make sure that where the investment activity and monitoring is done is in the strategies and objectives. We've got to be able to, got to have a high level of confidence that investments in those areas will allow us to achieve the goals.
Agree, absolutely agree.
So, to that great discussion, do we need to make a decision of changing the goal from increased kindergarten readiness rates? Oh, you already took it out. All right. So she's changed the proposed goal. She's taken out select Title I schools. She's removed the select. So it's increased kindergarten readiness rates in Title I elementary schools by at least 5 percentage points by 2030 compared to the 2024 baseline. So did anyone have anything else to add?
Uh,
Uh,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
yeah, someone mentioned, well, I think it was you that raised the question about maybe reducing the 2030 goal to to maybe
28.
3 years as opposed to 5 years. Do we want to address that, or we want to let it stay as it is? And then we talked about the baseline. If we have data from 2025, maybe that 2024 needs to be changed to 2025, or is that something that we'll discuss at another meeting or what?
I'm open to that, but I Superintendent Hannah, I know there's other expert on here. I just thought about it. I don't know if it.
Yeah,
What are
again,
your
we
thoughts?
want to set ourselves up for success, right?
That's right.
But I think moving it to 2028 is fair. If we want to leave 2024, I think
In two
let's
years. I'm sorry, Mr. Hannah. So we're currently in 25, 26. So in 2 years,
well, you'd
that's
say
what we're,
25,
so
26, 26, 27, 27, 28. So it'd be 3 years. So you'd measure it again in the fall of 28. So you'd measure it again in the fall in the 28, beginning of the 28, 29 year. So you'd have this year 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28. And then in the fall of 28, that would be when we have to
so
reach the goal.
right, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but we're counting a year where we are just now establishing the goal. That's my concern, is that we would
Yeah.
count a year and we won't even adopt the goal until January, but we're going to count this year as a measurement year. So that's just my concern.
Right. Well, or you can split it. You can say 2029. I mean, I don't, or you can leave it at 2030. I think again, we're on the right path. We're on the right track. Is the community going to say, well, really 2030? I don't know, but
Whatever
uh,
you all decide. If you want to go down to 28, it was originally 29 when we did the last meeting. And then my
well,
question would be, we said 24, so should we be looking at 24, 25 as the baseline?
Will we have that data? Will we have that information, Madam Executive Director or Mr. Superintendent?
yeah. So can we put a pin in that? You want to just put a pin in the baseline? It's either going to be 2024 or August of 2024 or August of 2025. And then as far as 2030 or 2029, I mean, I don't really care. But do we need to make that decision right this second?
I'd like for us to get this in as good a draft as possible, because we've taken an hour to revisit this, and that only leaves us an hour, really 45 minutes to try to address the next piece. So I'd like to try to finalize this because we're not going to come back to it at our next meeting. So if we want to stay at 2030, that's fine. If you want to go to 28, if I had my druthers and so what I'm also looking at is our human resource. I'm looking at our staff. I'm looking at all of those things as well. And so I want to make sure that we aren't setting ourselves up and we don't have the infrastructure to manage that, given where this council has been as far as our staffing.
All right. So,
So
can we do this? Can we just say leave it at 2030 and do August of 2025? How about that?
okay.
Are y'all okay with that?
Yeah, August of 2025. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, ma'am. And then leave it by 30-30. And that's 5 years. Basically what people will see from 25 to 30 is 5 years and 5 points.
Right.
And it's 2 years before we go back to ballot. So I think the timing's perfect, but
I don't have a problem with it at this point.
All right.
all right.
All right. Well, with that, we have our draft SMART goal for kindergarten readiness, which we will present to the full council. Do we have any other comments, feedback before we move on to the next discussion topic?
Mr. Chair, just to follow up, in these, the changes, all of this will be sent to us. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
Oh, I do have one more question. So just to be clear on the measurement indicator, PM3 is not going to be the measure to determine kindergarten readiness rates. It's PM1. So do we want to reverse it by saying PM1 unified scale performance of 708 or better, and then also tracking PM3? Because we're using PM1 as our goal. And then I would say tracking, yeah, right, 788.
How's that?
Yeah, I think that makes more sense. And then I just got to, like I said, anyway, we'll be fine. I got it. But let's also be clear to Commissioner Cummings' point. I'm not telling the teachers to take the test for the kids. I'm just telling them to make sure they set them up where they can give us an idea of what's actually in their brains. They're not going to act.
I just want to make sure that they don't think the council's saying you need to. I just, our teachers are doing
no, but
so
we've never. Right. Anyway, it's all good.
okay.
All right.
All right. Perfect. So it's 10:11. We can go ahead and dive into the youth development. So it's pretty much the same process as the last one when we were talking about kindergarten readiness. I don't know if you actually have a draft. I haven't seen one. Did you guys prepare? Okay, go ahead, Sika.
Yeah, and we purposely don't send them out because we want to have the discussion here. So youth success, that's kind of what we're calling it. So next slide. So when we look at Title I, grades 6 through 8 schools, so our middle schools, again, the darker the shading, the more the impact of those social disparities and all of the things. So you will see again in our southern part of Leon County is where we are not seeing as much success in our middle schools. So next slide. So we were looking at grade level reading here. And so green indicates that you've got about 80% or so, 70 or 80% of your students that are reading at grade level. Yellow, not quite that. Red is where our disparity is. And if you look, that red is out in that Fort Braden area. So again, we're looking at the same part of Leon County where we're seeing some lower achievements. Next slide. So chronic absenteeism has been a significant topic, not only in our state, but nationally. And one of the biggest issues with chronic absenteeism is the definition of absenteeism varies from state to state. In some cases, it varies from school district to school district. And so when we look at chronic absenteeism in grades 6 through 8, we're looking at, for Leon County, 21 days or more absent from school. So the green shows that about less than 20% of students in the area that is green hit that. Yellow, between 20 and 40%. And then, of course, red, you have greater than 40% of students are considered chronically absent. In the retreat that Leon County Schools had earlier this year, I believe it was Dr. Benny Bolden that presented information on absenteeism and are realizing that academic achievement is directly tied to being present in school. not necessarily always the behavioral issue, but rather whether they are in school. And so that is why we thought it important to bring this up when we're talking about that youth success. Next slide. And then we also wanted to show you 8th grade math when we're looking at absenteeism. So when we're looking at absenteeism, the green would be greater than 80% achievement. So we don't see any green at all. The yellow would be between 50 and 80%. We see where that is. And then, of course, the red would be lower than 50%. So you can see where the 8th grade math levels directly correlate to the number of days that our students are in school. So suffice it to say that chronic absenteeism has become one of the leading reasons that we're not seeing that academic success and achievement as we get into the middle and high school years for our students. Next slide. So when we look at these two indicators, they are just two very common indicators when we're looking at youth success. So the self-harm in 23, and we showed you this a little bit earlier, was about 38.7 out of 100,000. And then our teen suicide rates was about 6.9 out of 100,000, and that was in 2023. Next slide. So as we did with kindergarten readiness, we drafted a few SMART goals for your consideration as we look at how we want to increase outcomes for our youth. So the first one we present is increasing the percentage of Leon County third graders reading on grade level and 8th graders performing on 8th grade level in math. We have select Title I. We can take that out, of course, by 5 percentage points by 2023. And that would be compared to whichever, we have FAST assessment, but it would be whichever assessment that Superintendent Hannah believes would be the one that we should use to measure. The second goal could be reducing the countywide chronic absenteeism K through 12 by 10% by 2030, and we would use FDOE and Leon County school attendance data for that. Another one could be increasing the percentage of Leon County youth, middle and high school, reporting strong protective factors and positive mental health by 10%. Same time period, we'd be using the Florida Youth Substance Abuse Survey or other publicly available well-being tools. And then the last one we drafted is increasing the percentage of young adults 18 to 24 in Leon County who are either employed or enrolled in post-secondary education or training by 10%, and we would use the census data on that. So these are just some starting points for you to discuss, given some of the information that we've presented. Before I turn it back over to our chair, I do want to just present some of the initiatives that we've already funded. So our out of school time, we're currently funding for this academic year, and the RFP process is open for next academic year. We've done the summer feeding that we've done. We have the mentoring programs that we funded, and as you know, we wrapped mentoring into our after school. And then we have our summer youth internship program that we currently finished our second year that has shown some very positive outcomes when it comes to youth in apprenticeships and internships. So those are things that we've already done some investment that this council has approved.
Mr. Watts?
Yes, Councilmember Jones.
Unless these percentage points have been vetted by the district, I would think that they are ambitious, but I don't know that. And for example, if the 10% absenteeism, if it is steadily climbing and it's not waning, if it's waxing now and not waning, then 10% seems rather ambitious, particularly when I don't know what we already have in place as a district to respond to absenteeism, because I guess for me, most simply, these children come from homes who have parents who permit this absenteeism, and I don't understand. How we I don't know how we respond to it. I defer to the superintendent and his team to come up with those types of recommendations. But again, that 10% seems rather ambitious, particularly if those numbers are currently waxing.
And let me again clarify, these are all draft. These are by no means do I think you need to accept, try to
I
create four. I
understand.
think
I
okay.
understand that it's good that the superintendent's on, and then some of. But I think I can imagine that some of these recommendations. It would be my suggestion, Mr. Watts, that a lot of these recommendations that the superintendent would go back to his team in all of our categories and vet those with the professionals who already have programs in place that are being done by the district, sans the involvement from providers that we would fund, but then could come back to us with what they believe are. And I'm not saying that we don't want to set the bar high, that we want to lowball it, but we don't want to also set ourselves up for failure based upon such that the numbers are not. I don't want to use the word arbitrary, but I think that there are trends that we study at the district level that would inform this perhaps in ways that we would not have access to what we are doing in terms of our already intentional investments as a district to respond to our shared constituency of students. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. And Mr. Hannah, before I go to you, let me ask something to Sika. And Sika, I appreciate these drafts. They're good on the surface, but I am struggling with each one of them on like several levels. So let me ask you this. I think 21, 24, if I have this right, we've spent six million in youth success. Am I somewhere around that?
Yes. Hold on,
So
because I have let me go back.
So if we have 6 million that we perhaps already spent in youth and success, we didn't have any. I know you started talking about something, but we didn't have any. Were any of these particular proposed goals, like this first one, the third grade reading? I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to articulate, but you don't have any proposals based on the 6 million that we perhaps already spent where we already, because these seem like, again, it's like really heavily focused on like what Superintendent Hannah and the school system, I don't know.
So when we look at the theory of change, um, the theory of change references that fall under youth success and youth development, increasing school performance and reducing juvenile crime, increasing resiliency and reducing the number of consequences of adverse childhood events, increasing occupational skills, career pathways, and economic opportunities for youth, and increasing food security for children, youth, and families. So the funding that we've done, and it's 6.6 million over the last 4 years, have addressed those areas. So they were investments to create self-supportive environments where children and youth could thrive academically, foster resilience, provide mentoring, and offering enrichment and workforce readiness opportunities. So these drafts kind of were born out of that, looking at the needs assessment, looking at the theory of change, and determining where do we want to be from an actual goal. So we're not going to accept all of them. That's number one. They are they're varied because we wanted to give you an opportunity to think about where is it that you want to be. And that's why I went through what we've already funded, where we've already been, so that there could be a determination on where you want it to be. If absenteeism is too huge of an issue for us to address, then we won't look at that one. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Go ahead, Superintendent.
Well, I just agree with Mr. Jones. I need a chance probably to vet some of these. I would probably move to 2025 like we did with the other one. The absentee thing is, there's just been a shift, guys. Like yesterday, Christy came home and said the boy just told her that him and his dad are going hunting all week next week before Christmas break. So he's gonna be gone a week from school, and a little girl that was gone a month in Indonesia. And I mean, there's a shift even with adults and coming to work, and yeah, a lot of our employees probably exhibit chronic absenteeism if you look at the definition of it over the course of an entire school year that missed 10 days. So I just think before we do it, we need to make sure that we're doing things that are set us up for success and that get us wins. But to Mr. Jones' point, I think that reducing chronic absenteeism by 10% is maybe somewhat challenging. But I think I need to take this as a draft as it is and talk to our folks about it, and then come back at least for the two that are relying on our data or the school district to see how our people feel about it. The other ones I can't really speak to. The bottom two bullets I can't speak to.
Councilmember Cummins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank our executive director for the draft goals so that, we can scrutinize them and analyze them. And also Superintendent Hannah's willingness to work with us on those and, look at some real numbers from the school board. But I just want to ask, do we have any idea, Madam Executive Director, the 6.6 million that we have spent over the last 4 years in youth success and youth development, is there any particular entity or group or any particular program that we can point to that we feel was successful in any of these areas that we want to address?
Hold on, I'm getting my. So we funded. Trying to see. So of course, our youth internship program was widely successful. We also funded mentorship programs that were very successful. We rolled that into the family support program. So Girls Circle, funding the Boys and Girls Club, funding Omega Lamplighters. And we've gotten very positive feedback. We've given you guys reports on that. Right. So that is entails where we funded when we're talking about youth development, mentoring, leadership skills, apprenticeships, and the like. We've also invested in the worlds of work. So when we talk about exposing our youth to career pathways early, and of course that is the Talent Development Council of North Florida's initiative, where they are introducing all ninth graders in Leon County to different careers. So we've touched the waters on this, but need to kind of hone in on where we want to be as far as a youth development and youth success space.
Okay. And we need, I guess, a metrics, not only a metrics of measurement, but we need, as you indicated here, maybe a baseline that we start from to determine youth success in what particular areas. So that's something that we as a committee need to look at. But I believe Superintendent Hammond is just going to be very essential in, looking at the stats that he has to give us some direction in how we measure youth success and where we want to invest council funds in programs that we believe will give us the biggest bang for our bucks, and that we feel can move the needle in a positive direction for our young people.
Yeah, let me also say that the after school funding, so the out of school time RFP that the council approved last year, goes to the availability of safe, enriching after school opportunities for our children in Leon County. We know that we also supported some of 21st Century given that situation. So I did want to add that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And before I go to Councilmember Jones, I want to propose something before we lose Superintendent Hannah. Would there be an appetite for at least the first, because he's going to go back and do research. So I wondered if we could even narrow down, would there even be an appetite for increase the percentage of Leon County third graders reading on grade level, remove the eighth grader performing on grade level in math and just focus on since we already have our first kindergarten readiness, would it make sense maybe want to explore how we then impact the third grader readers as a actual SMART goal? Would there be any appetite for that?
Yeah, I like that. Just make it simple. Just focus on, because they talk about two things: kindergarten readiness, third grade reading scores. There ain't a whole lot of folks talking about eighth grade math scores, but they're vitally important. Don't get me wrong, but I do think we want to keep this simple. We want to keep it where people can get, either we're doing it or we're not doing it. So I would agree with that.
And then one other piece, Sika, the one about the mental health X, Y, and Z. That information came from, you have data that supports the need for mental health supports with middle and high school. Is that
Yes, that's one of the reasons why the council voted to approve girls' circles and mental health counseling for
okay?
our middle and young high schools. So behavioral health, and mental health counseling continues to be a need.
Okay, and that might tie into gun violence. Perhaps I'm doing a stretch, but okay. Um, I propose that first bullet, and I propose it. I think it's okay to have two SMART goals under this one.
Mhm.
Somehow just kind of flushing out that one around mental health or X, Y, and Z, because that's not going to stop that internship program with funding right now, right? Sika
No,
for the summer.
no, it will
Okay.
not. And as a matter of fact, we could create metrics in the internship program that help feed into the increase of mental health well-being.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilmember Jones.
I think that one of the things that would be helpful, Mrs. Green, is the metrics that you shared with us at the very beginning with the arrows,
Mhm.
the application of those metrics across the pillars for which we've had impact, those metrics working in tandem with the pillars, for example, would help to inform, give much of our SMART goals context. Because we've already had spending, and then you know how you did the pie chart in terms of the amount of money you had in those areas regarding those SMART goals, that it wouldn't be done all in mass, but we would kind of disaggregate them according to the SMART goals. And they would work so that way you see it in that category or as that pillar. This is where we've seen the progress: red arrow, up arrow, down arrow, whatever. And then subsequently, from what we've already assessed, we'll then see this. I do believe that I disagree with the superintendent on the fourth bullet under youth success. We can measure that because we've been intentional in our investments in our certification programs and our pipeline to our young people to lively. We can measure the number of young people who are employed who walk across our graduation stages because, matter of fact, the superintendent graduation says, how many of you stand up if you've earned your certificate? So that means they're walking across the stage with a diploma and a career. So we can measure that, and we've been intentional about that, and that's a measurement we can capture. So just those are my recommendations.
Thank you,
So may
Councilmember.
I,
Oh, go ahead.
no. May I ask that of the four, can we remove two? Would that help? Let's
Uh,
remove two, and then that leaves two to workshop, to refine. That's the word I'm looking for.
I mean, I propose the first one, keeping that one. I
Mhm.
propose removing the attendance one. I also propose I'm okay with exploring either of the third or fourth, but the fourth, if you think there's an avenue and if it's appropriate, that that also captures, the mental health piece. If we need that, then we can keep number three because you're gonna have, I'm sorry, number four, because you're gonna have possible activities that address the mental health under that fourth one. But that would be my proposal. Keep number one, and then I'm up for either keeping three or four. What does the group want to
Are we
propose?
trying to stack the deck?
I'm sorry.
Are we stacking the deck? I think all of these measurements are important.
Okay.
So how do we discern that I mean, so I don't want us to just get easy wins. I want us to still. I'm not suggesting anything other than that. I'm just saying, I think every category is important. We just need to make certain that we choose measurements that are genuinely and legitimately attainable, and that comes from the guide. I think that comes from perhaps influence coming from our district. I don't want to avoid chronic absenteeism because it is a challenge that we would want providers who we provide investment with to address. I just don't want us to give ourselves a number that we can't achieve. And we can't avoid mental health because we know that mental health is one of the barriers between student success. So I don't think we ought to get rid of any of them. I just want us to make certain that we're giving goals that are truly attainable and not just arbitrary. That's all. But I don't think we should get rid of any of them because there's still standards by which we should be able to measure our success of our stewardship of our resources.
Okay, I appreciate that perspective. I just for clarity, I was just going based on our last discussion where we were looking at several, and we had came to a consensus that you know what we don't necessarily need to have five goals, and we narrowed it down to one SMART goal. So that's where I was going with the narrow. Not to
And
say
I
that the
apologize I missed that conversation, Mr. Chair.
Yes, yes. So that's where it's not. So it's not that we couldn't even revisit the absenteeism in another, next phase, but that's where it was. But yes, we can. If the proposal is that we just need to get better data on all of these before we then make a decision of what we want to focus on, or that it makes sense what we're articulating, we can do that as well. I'll go to Councilmember Cummins.
Uh, uh, yes, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree with all the comments. I'm also concerned about the areas that we want to address. I think clearly those are areas that need to be addressed as it relates to our youth. But then I think what we as a council need to look at is whether or not in achieving any of the goals that we're setting forth, whether or not there are service providers, because we don't provide the services directly, whether or not there are service providers that are equipped to enter contracts with us and perform with our use such that the areas that we're concerned about will be changed in a positive manner. So again, I appreciate our executive director drafting these based on what we know are clearly the needs of our youth in our community. But I don't want us to, as has been said before, set up ourselves for failure. And it's whether or not there are service providers out there, and we might have some experience with some, but do we have service providers that we can contract with that has the ability and the capacity to move the needle and make positive changes for our young people in these areas of need? And I know there are service providers, there are other entities, there's city and county that has been addressing these areas infinitum, you know. And I just want to make sure that we as a council can have confidence in the fact that, okay, these are our draft SMART goals, and we feel confident that we can make a positive change in those areas with the services that we contract for our youth.
I think that's great feedback. So I'll have a proposal before perhaps we conclude and just get feedback if how people feel about this. So to Councilmember Jones's point, these current 4 items here, perhaps we come back with the next meeting, Seek team could have, I'm saying this lightly, right? Not to say you didn't vet this data, but more validated percentages to go along with these 4 items as proposal drafts. But then to Commissioner Cummings' point, and you may have already done this, Sika. So, for example, if we went with reduced countywide chronic absenteeism, do we actually have groups out there or agencies or resources or services that we would even be able to fund? I'm saying that lightly, right? To even help us achieve that goal. Does that make sense? So maybe we need to, for each one of these, have just an idea of like this exists. We wouldn't be completely trying to fund something that doesn't exist. Is that clear as mud so far?
Well, it's a couple things. Remember the council's, in statute, we can expand on things, we can expand on programs that are working, or we can create a program in a place that doesn't already exist. So I think when we talk about chronic absenteeism, and I'm not trying to sway it one way or the other, it's you all's decision. But when we talk about chronic absenteeism, we know that it's an issue. We know that the superintendent has said, look, we got issues with attendance all the way around. So is it us coming to the table with providers, with the school district, with mental health, is it coming to the table to talk about it? Attendance Works is a national group, and we have a local person here, Dr. Anika Williams, where they are looking at strategies nationwide to help address absenteeism. So again, it's not that the percentage points are arbitrary. Well, in some case, when you're trying to move something a percentage point, it is arbitrary. You're trying to say, okay, well, we're looking at what the research says, and we're going to try to achieve it by a certain time. So 10% could be, that could definitely be a lot. But we were just trying to start somewhere. My concern is adopting so many goals that we're spreading our money too thinly, to the superintendent's point, almost every meeting. So, and again, I'm looking at infrastructure. I'm looking at what we bring back to you as proposals to help achieve the goals. So it's not that any one is more important than the other. It's where are we going to focus? And then remember, in about 3 years, we come back, look at the strategic plan, see where we are. If we're moving in the right direction, then yeah, we'll keep doing that. And if it's time to change a goal or add a goal, we can do that. So I hope that answered the question because I
Oh
felt
no,
myself.
I thought it was great. We'll go to Councilmember Johnson and then Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important that if we look at these 4 SMART goals, that we don't, as a council, have to make financial investments in each and every one of them. If we believe those 4 SMART goals are critical success factors for youth in our community, the first thing we need to know is who is or should be making those investments, and us understanding it. And we report to the community as the catalyst for change, to make sure the community is focused on these are critically and vitally important metrics for youth success. If we can make strategic financial investments, we can do it as a council, but I don't feel compelled, if these are vitally important for the success of our youth, to be bank for each and every SMART goal that's out there if either Leon County Schools or other providers are out there doing things. We just come alongside and help measure it so that we can report to the community in a coherent fashion that we think we are measuring the things that are vitally important for our youth, from the whole continuum that Sika laid out, from prenatal to age 24, we don't have enough bank to make the impact in each of those areas. But I think we have an obligation to identify the most important ones in our community, know what providers are in there or should be in there, and hold them accountable for meeting some of these metrics as well.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Jones.
Well, okay. I hear the group. I look forward to whatever additional information the staff returns to us that will help us to inform, and whatever recommendations that may come from the superintendent in terms of what we should adopt as our SMART goals. I want us to also take into consideration, as we identify which of the SMART goals we will choose, that we have already identified that there are providers who are equipped to be responsive in for those goals that we have chosen. I wouldn't want us to choose a goal for where there is no capacity for the organizations to help move the needle. And so there's also the capacity assessment of our providers that also has to be taken into consideration as well. And so I know that, for example, in mental health, again, I'm not entirely certain of the strength of the providers who are providing services, and they may there may very well be a great number. I don't know, but I would look forward to the staff also as they come back with the recommendations that that would also be a consideration in terms of what would be our selections.
All right, thank you for that, Councilmember Jones. So I think that's a good ending placeholder. And so our next
Superintendent has his
discussion.
hand up.
Oh, I didn't see. Oh, sorry, Superintendent Hannah.
That's all right. Real quick. So that first one, so you could just need to reword it. It says where the Title I schools, like either in Title I schools or put the Title I schools at the beginning. Because it just says Title I schools. You see that when you read it?
Okay.
Anyway, you can reword that one, and so the goal is now for us to come back and nail down this one again after thinking a little more through it. Is that it, Mr. Watts?
Yes. So what I envision is that Sika and her team are likely going to circle back with you on these as far as whatever research or additional validation might be required. Based on these percentage numbers here, and that yes, that team will come back to us that next phrase, and we still need to land on what we're going to decide to do for Youth and Success SMART goal or goals, plural. But then also, I think the next, so it's okay. We're still doing good on time, and a little bit, we were going to talk about family supports at our next agenda. I'm not sure how far we will get into that discussion, but I wondered, Sika, I know you are hesitant about sending the draft goals, but do you think there might be an opportunity to send the draft proposal goals for the family supports for us to have an opportunity to digest that before the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that. Did that answer? And did anybody else have any other questions or comments or feedback? Oh, go ahead, Councilmember
Chair,
Cummings.
yes, thank you for a great meeting. I just want to make sure, as far as committee members, we don't really have an assignment at this point. We'll just come back to our next meeting with more succinct draft goals, and then we'll hopefully get the family support goals prior to the next meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So with youth success, we've got the 4 draft goals. So what you want to see is so what you want us to send you for the next meeting. I need clarity because we talked a
Okay.
lot about
Let me
these
give you
goals
that. Let me
and
give you
what you
that. Give
wanted
you an
and what you
example.
needed. And so I need a little clarity on
Sure.
what you need.
So for example, the absenteeism SMART goal you guys proposed, it had a 10%. You were going to reduce it maybe by 10%. I'm paraphrasing. So I think what I heard from the group is, what does that even mean? What information currently right now exists for absenteeism?
Okay.
10%, is that even something achievable for us? Like building that out with some additional data. The 5 points for the third grade reading, is that an arbitrary number? What does that mean? I think that's what I heard from Council Member Jones around anything that you had data on. Like, did we vet that through what Superintendent Hannah's schools data? Did we line that up? That's so we wanted to give Superintendent Hannah an opportunity to say, yeah, this makes sense. This maybe doesn't make sense. It should be X, Y, and Z. So you're gonna have to bring all those back. You're gonna have to coordinate with Superintendent Hannah on those draft goals and bring those back to the council for the next meeting, more refined. Short version is what I took from that. And then what we also want before the next meeting is the family supports. Whatever draft goals you guys create, send those to us ahead of time before that meeting. Did anyone else take anything differently from what we need from Seeking team? Go ahead, Councilmember Johnson.
Don't we need some strategies and objectives underneath each of those SMART goals like we did for the kindergarten readiness?
So
Okay, I think let me add this. That makes complete sense to me. I feel like the last time we landed on the actual goal and then you all came back with the strategies. But I
Right.
think to
that's what we
Councilmember
did.
Johnson's point, it's maybe in line with Commissioner Cummings is, do we have organizations out there with the capacity? I don't know, but I think what we
Well,
did, go ahead.
I guess my concern is I don't know how much of that we can get before the next meeting. Again, we've got a limited staff. And so this is kind of Holly and me working on this in addition to everything else. And so the way it worked last time was you landed on a goal and then we provided you the strategies to kind of help achieve that. In this case, this is a little more in depth because you're asking us to give you strategies for each one of these, but you may not adopt all of them. So I think for me, it would be clearer if you landed where you thought you wanted to be, and then we can give you where we think the strategies would be that would help achieve that. I would not want to create these strategies under each one of these, and then I'm concerned that you adopt all of them, which means we now have to try to figure out how to get funding into all of them. And I respect what Brent said, but I am concerned about us adopting a goal that we are not invested in because we are measured by these goals. And I think what you're saying, Brent, makes sense for a community vision and a community goal. But I am concerned about us adopting a goal that we don't invest in, but that we're required to monitor how that goal is going. So I just like for us to maybe think about that and maybe discuss it a little bit more on how we do that as a staff. How do we monitor what someone else is doing to achieve a goal that we've adopted if we're not investing in it?
That
So
point is
that's
well
just
made.
something to think about.
That point's well made.
Excuse me, Chair Jones?
No, I said that point is well made. Yeah, it would just be those ones. For one, we know there's capacity and providers and the goals that we would accept. So no, we wouldn't be measuring goals beyond goals that we invest in. I can't imagine that because we have no influence there. We have no skin in the game.
And I agree with that, Mr. Chair, as well.
So, all right, let's,
So
so
I'm
you have it
clear.
now.
I think I'm clear on
Okay,
where we need to be and
correct.
what we need. And so with that, Vice Chair, we'll put some strategies. We're going to do our best to get some strategies under all four of these, and then maybe it'll make it a little easier for you guys to narrow down. Or I guess if you decide on all four, then we will move all four. What I suggest though is we be very strategic, and we don't want to stack the deck. I think Chair Jones is his point is taken. We don't want to stack the deck. We want to create goals that we know are imperative, that if achieved, we know will be better. But we also don't want to bite off more than we can chew. And so just know that I'm always weighing your desires as a council against what I know that we can feasibly and humanly do.
May I,
But I think I
Mr.
know where you
Chair,
need us to be.
Mr. Chair, the good part about it, if a part of what we take into consideration is that we would set these goals for 3 years instead of to like 2028 instead of to 2030, then some of these that we have not met, that we have not adopted in 2028, we can then see where the data or the metrics show where those other goals that have been recommended that we do not adopt, we can then revisit those, see what the climate is for that particular actionable item, and then perhaps then pick that up in 2028 to take us through 2030. So we wouldn't, so I wouldn't, so this document becomes a living, breathing document beyond its life. Its life goes beyond our next era of measurement, the 2028, but it lives beyond that because we will then potentially revisit them again after we will have measured what will be our investments over the next 3 years.
All right, thank you for that. So I think we have marching orders. I think we have maybe 2 more meetings left. Is that correct, Sika?
I think we only have one more on the books. We probably need to add a second
Yes.
one,
Okay.
add an additional one, and it will be before the end of the year. So we're
Okay,
gonna move
yep. So we can
fast.
get through the family. Yes, I recommend that as well. All right, with that, we actually made
Mr. Chair,
time.
can I get the date of the next meeting? I'm sorry.
I think the next meeting is going to be, actually,
Trinity,
what is
can
the
you
next?
pull that up?
Okay,
Yes, our next meeting is December 11th at 3 p.m.
got it. Thank you. And Trinity will send out a poll to go ahead and get another potential last meeting on the books, and we should likely be concluded. Any other comments? That's the next on the agenda. If not, no
So that
hands
last
raised.
meeting will need to be the week of the 15th. So we have the meeting on the 11th, so we're gonna send a poll for the week of the 15th because that following week is Christmas.
And
And
those,
the week of the 15th, we also have the commission meeting on that Thursday, the
Right.
18th.
Right.
and those meetings are by Zoom, except the council meeting on the 18th.
Correct.
The committee meetings are Zoom.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, if we end up doing it the day of the council meeting, we could do it in person in advance of the council meeting. So just if we can leave our options open on that, we would do it on person and then lead right into the council meeting. So we'll present some options for you all.
Thank you.
We appreciate that, and it's not entirely impossible that we might actually conclude next meeting on the 11th. They're going to send us those draft goals ahead of time. We can review them, and it's not impossible that we might not have the proposed SMART goals completed all by December 11th in time to present to the council. So still have my fingers crossed on that.
In January.
January.
Mhm.
Do we have any other comments? All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great meeting.